Good morning and welcome to the How Can I Help My Child series. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be ignited. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but it is a fire to be ignited. What this means is when we encourage our children to learn relevant skills, what we are doing is we are igniting their potential to become lifelong learners. My name is Maribeth Chima, and I am the founder of the Parenting Through Mentorship Academy and PTM Resources. And I would like to welcome you to today's show. Welcome to that village where we train together. Yes, welcome to the village for parents of young children and preteens. We agreed that it still takes a village to train a child, and this is why we do the things that we do, because we know that if we're going to train our children effectively into this world, then we need to create, or we need to find our village where we can learn together and where we can become together and we can help our children become the best versions of themselves. I said in the post that I wrote this morning that the brain or the mind are not built, right? They are not born, but rather they are built over time. I didn't say that. It's actually a quote, right? That the mind and the brain is actually not born, right? The development of it is going to be done through the support of parents and primary caregivers in the lives of our children. Psychologists believe that when children are born, they are born tabula rasa, meaning they come, with the brain like an empty flash drive that is ready to plug, just ready to plug on to their environment, where they begin to upload and they begin to learn all of the things in that environment. And this is how children develop their brains and their minds. All right. So in the dynamics, we said children will develop their brains and brain development and all of that, is something that has to be learned. Now, there is a dynamic that is behind, developing, okay, this skill. And it is known as, a set of skills known as executive functioning skill and self-regulation. We talked yesterday about relevant skills that our children need, especially as young children and as preteens. And we talked about basic skills that our children need. We talked about the ability for our children, helping our children learn to regulate their emotions, read, and develop literacy skills, social skills, self-management skills, empathy, and all of that. So I just touched on basic skills yesterday, and I said I was going to talk about a little more complex, some other complex skills that our children need, especially at this phase of their lives. And today we're looking at executive functioning skill and self-regulation. All right. Now, learning is not all about our children learning about numbers and language and colors and concepts and all of that. It is much more than that. All right. It is not just about, filling their minds with its instructions. We said the mind of the child is not a vessel where we just want to pour in and fill it up. All right. It is much more than that. All right. It is what we it is what we light up, it's what we ignite. And when this is ignited, then the child is able to take the stage, right, and then begin to develop all of the potentials that they have within them. And when this happens, we are raising human beings, we're raising our children to become people who are lifelong learners. So when we ignite, we build the capacity, or we build the potential, or we ignite our children to use the potential within them to become lifelong learners. And this is what, executive functioning skill is about. All right. This is what it's actually about. Our children being able to work and to coexist with other people, even with all of the distractions and all of the multiple demands around them. Our children being able to get that skill that helps them to control themselves, get them to inhibit, certain responses, and of course, coexist with other people. So executive functioning skills is being able to manage all of the different aspects of their lives while they stay focus on particular task per time, and they are effective in that task that they are staying focused on per time. It involves the working memory, it involves inhibitory control, and then, of course, mental flexibility. I'm going to take you through a little process that will help you understand it, because I know executive functioning skills, and the concept behind it is one thing that can be difficult for, parents to run, put their heads around. Okay, so I'm going to try to make it as basic as possible so that you can understand what this concept of executive function, right? What it's all about. Now, think of it this way, that you have a child, you have your toddler, all right, that is playing or is in the classroom or is in the playground with a bunch of friends, all right? That's one scenario. Now, think of it as you have your preteen, right, that is trying to have conversation or is in the classroom or in a gathering, right, having conversations, all right? Now, at the point where your toddler is playing with his friend, they probably are playing a game where they have to take turns, right? Okay, and then at the point, I'm going to be going through the scenarios side by side. And at the point where your preteen is in this gathering, right, with their friends, they are trying to have a conversation. Now, your toddler's ability to take his turn and know that he should pass it on to the next person so that the person can have a turn also is the child exhibiting inhibitory control. The ability to know when to stop, okay, and move on to the next thing. Okay, the ability to know when it is time he's done with having a turn and moving on to the next person to have a turn. All right. This is inhibitory control. It is the same thing with the child in that conversation, your toddler, your preteen, for instance, that is having a conversation or is in a group where they have to talk. All right. The ability to know that I have just shared my perspective, okay, and then I give the other person a chance to share their perspective. I know when to stop and have the other person talk and then listen to the person. Is the ability to actually inhibit themselves from going on and on and on and on. Now, when children have this ability, we say we have inhibitory control. They know when to be on task and they know when to pause and take another task or something like that. All right. So you will see that these skills will come in handy, even as they grow and for the rest of their lives. All right. So let's not go into how we see. We will come to that later. All right. So that gives you a picture of what having inhibitory control is about. Now let's move to working memory. All right. Now, after the toddler has passed, the ball probably or whatever it is that they're playing with to the next person, okay, and he stays in there and is able to remember when it is his turn again. All right. So when he gets back to his turn, he's able to remember, oh, it's my turn again. And this is what I am supposed to do. Now, at that point, we say the child's working memory has been activated. All right. Now, for your preteen, the ability to be on that conversation, all right, and not stray to some other thing. All right. He's on that conversation and he's able to stay on that subject and have conversation. So every time he has a turn to talk again or the opportunity comes for him to, come in again, he's able to stay on that task or stay on that topic. And if, for instance, he has to go off, for example, they had to go off that, conversation, and the conversation comes up, he is able to know, okay, all that has been said so far, and he's able to continue that conversation. When we have that, we say that their working memory is activated. So that is the child that has that ability. All right. And then mental flexibility. If something goes wrong during the course of that activity for your toddler, for instance, the ball rolls off. Okay, let's say they are playing ball or they are passing the ball and the ball rolls off. Or for instance, one of the kids goes off, something unexpected or something that was not planned happens. The child's ability, right, to move on to something else that is appropriate, or the child's ability to go and bring back that ball and continue, their ability to respond to the emergencies or the things that are unplanned that happen, right, during the course of their activity or the course of their life. We say this person has got mental flexibility, all right, being able to, manage yourself even when you have things that are unplanned come in your way as you do the things that you do in your everyday life. So you can tell, I mean, even with this short um explanation, that these skills are skills that our children need today and they will need for the rest of their lives. So when children struggle with these skills, right? When our children struggle with these skills, now how it comes across to you as a parent or a caregiver who does not understand that there are skills like these that need to be developed, what happens or what comes across to you is that the child is not listening, the child is not paying attention. So you are in that circle, for instance, maybe you're having a circle time with the children, and one of the kids gets a turn, he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know how to pass it to the next person, he doesn't know, and everybody's screaming at him, pass it, pass it. Now you're screaming at him for someone who is absolutely clueless, is probably even going to get angry with the child. Like, don't you have eyes? Can't you see? But what is happening is that child has not developed that skill. The child does not have that ability, okay, at that level yet. And so this is why this is the issue. Or you send your child to go and do something from your living room to your bedroom. And by the time he gets to the bedroom, he's completely lost. Okay, completely lost as to what it is that he was sent and all of that. The child's working memory is not fully developed yet. So these are some of the gaps that we see in our children. And because we don't understand, because a lot of times as parents, we have only one tool in our toolbox for responding to every part of our children's development. So we don't know, and the only thing we do is we know how to react when the children are not giving us the responses that we want or we desire. All right, but when you get knowledge, you would understand that there is actually much more than that. All right, so the prefrontal cortex, right? We've heard him, I mean, if you follow me, you've heard this over and over again. But you will hear about the prefrontal cortex over and over again when you are dealing with children, because it is a part of the brain that actually controls emotionally, I'm sorry, that actually controls executive functioning skills and, of course, regulation. So this is the part of the brain that controls these activities. And this part of the brain does not get fully developed until the child is somewhere around 25, 26, somewhere in their mid-20s. That's when the child's brain is fully developed like an adult brain and can be activated and, to work basically like an adult's brain works. So when you, the adults, are expecting certain things of a child who is 8, 10, 12, 15, even at 20, what you are doing is you are telling that child, right, to be you, right? Operate at the level of your brain. All right, but we will be talking more about this so that we can understand this even more. All right, so the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, and of course it is responsible for executive functioning skill. All right, so it controls the behavior through the interaction. So yes, it controls the executive functioning skills, or is responsible for executive functioning skills, but it doesn't work alone. All right, it works with other parts of the brain to control the behavior that we see in our children. It begins by connecting one neuron to the other, and then as the children grow, these neural connections begin to increase. Okay, something that started with one isolated neuron connecting to the next neuron begins to build complex neural connections over time. All right, so right from when the children are infants or when the children are babies, okay, so the experts say that the root of executive functioning skill is actually seen right from when the children are babies and infants. That's when the root of executive functioning skill is actually seen. And it continues to develop in the children through when they are toddlers up to adolescence, and then, of course, it peaks. Now, there is rapid connection in the first stage of their life, their early years. So a lot of connection is happening there. That's when those isolated neurons are beginning to connect and rapidly, pending depending on the environment where that child is growing, the level of connection that happens between these neurons and the other part of the child's brain is dependent on the relationship in the child's environment. I didn't say this, science said this. All right. So what science is saying is the brain is a relational organ, and the level of development that happens, or how rapidly so the brain is developing rapidly, and the amount or the speed of that development or the effectiveness of that development is actually dependent on the relationship in that environment. Who is relating to the child? How are you relating to the child? Because children learn through their relationship with their parents or primary caregivers. So it is said that when a child is in an environment that is stable, when a child is in an environment where there is communication, the right kind of communication, where the child is in an environment where there is a connection between the child and the parents. When the child is in an environment where there is emotional stability, what happens is the child's brain is able to make those neural connections, because the hormones that are needed in the child's brain to promote the development of the prefrontal cortex is actually triggered by positive experiences that the child has. So when you have a child who is in trouble, and rather than hitting and beating and screaming on them, you are having a conversation or you are supporting the child, what happens is the feel-good hormone, the hormones, all the hormones that are needed, okay, that are pumped into the brain at that time, right? There is a particular hormone that is responsible for developing the prefrontal cortex, and those hormones are only released when there is good experiences, when the child is having a good experience. All right. Now, in contrast to that, when the children have bad experiences, shock, pain, shame, and all of that. So when there is shock, it is said that the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is developed for the children to build cognitive abilities, executive functioning skills, relationship, and all of that, that part of the brain shuts down, because the brain will protect the child. So it shuts down to protect the child from being destroyed. So it shuts down, and at that point, the child is unable to learn anything. And of course, a negative hormone is being released into the child's brain that inhibits the growth of the prefrontal cortex. So you can have a child who is 10 from a stable home, and the level of neural connections that have happened in the child's brain or happening in the child's brain are at a level, and then you have another at a high level. Okay, then you have another child that is about 10 that is in an unstable environment, an abusive environment, a chaotic environment, and the child's neural connections are at a minimal or a lower level than that child. So you can see both children are developing, but they are not developing at the same pace. Okay, and remember, it is the prefrontal cortex that actually controls the ability to develop executive functioning skills, meaning the ability to, do well in school, all right? The ability to do well in school, the ability to have meaningful relationships, the ability to connect with people, all of the skills that we need, right, to survive is actually controlled by this part of the brain. All right. So I just thought to throw a little light, layman light into that. I'm sure if you go into it, looking at it, remember, this is a 15 to 20 minute show. So this is not the show. We can't even exhaust executive functioning skills in hours, not to talk of trying to do this in 20 minutes. All right. So that's just to throw a bit of light into, that part. All right. So let's move on. Right. So executive functioning skills it's said that it can actually be trained. All right. So children can be trained to develop executive functioning skills. So the more training, they have, the more this neural connections and all the part of the brain being connected, basically, that will will help promote, right, the behavior, or that is responsible for the behavior that we see in the child. All right. So it's like going to the gym, right? The more you exercise in the gym, the more muscles are built. The more you exercise in in the gym, the more, right, you become, those muscles are tamed, and the muscles, become the way we want them, right? Flexible and all of that, right? So it's the same thing with executive functioning skills. The more this is trained, through our relationship, through the practice of these skills, in the children, the more the children are able to do well in this skill. Remember, I said many times that we have children not respond the way we want them to respond, not doing things the way we want them to do them. It's not because the child has chosen not to. It's because the child hasn't developed the skills that they need to achieve these things. All right. So if we don't learn these skills, that's the sad part. If children don't learn these skills at the appropriate time, if we don't teach them these skills, if we don't equip them with these skills, it begins to show as they grow up. And it will show up in their relationship with people. It will show up in their jobs. It will show up in marriages. It will show up in the way we build our relationships in our communities and all of that. So now we're going to go straight and we will look at how executive functioning skills can be built, right? How we can develop executive functioning skills practically in our children, all right? Because we know that it is essential for critical thinking and for building strong character. Now, how do we ensure that our children are developing these skills? Because we know that it is a set of skills that can be taught and can be developed in our children. All right. So working memory. All right. So it's the working memory that allows your child the ability to hold information for some time. Okay. Hold information for some time. So now when this part of your child's brain is not developed, you will find out that the child has difficulties in solving problems because they don't know how to go about solving those problems, because they do not have the information that is necessary to help them solve problems. All right. They would also have problems with following instructions. Now, when you cannot hold, your working memory is not working, so as it should, you can't hold information. So it's very easy for that child to keep forgetting the instruction that you gave them. For instance, you said, when you wake up in the morning, clean this pot and all of that. But because the child's working memory is not operating right at an optimal or level, or that part of the brain has not been developed enough, what you will see is the child will keep forgetting. So when you find that your child is at this phase, what it means is that your child hasn't developed the skills that they need to execute this action effectively. So rather than hit and beat and inhibit the child from learning this, what you want to do is you want to give the child give the child experiences that will help the child practice this over and over again. All right. Part of those experiences is what? Part of those experiences is having the child do errands. You can, instruct the child. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a place where you are modeling. We've said that the best way to teach is to model to your child. All right. So model to the child, give the child instructions and see them go through that instruction, right? Go see that instruction through to the end. Now, the next time you want to give them that instruction, ask them to retell you the process. What do you have to do to achieve this instruction? The child goes this, and then get the child to do it immediately. So continue to work with the child that way, supporting the child that way. Okay. Do you know you can even actually go further by helping the child achieve the things that they have to achieve? What do I mean? For instance, you have told your kids, your preteen, you've told your preteen, okay, or your preteen has a task to ensure that the living room is cleaned in the afternoon, or they have a task to ensure that food is made, whatever task it is that you have given your child. Do you know that you can actually call in from work? Let's say this is supposed to, you're coming back from work at 4 o'clock, okay, and this is 2 o'clock. You can actually call from work and go like, oh, sweetie, what's going on? Okay, have you been able to do this? That alone serves as a prompt. So you can help children with prompts, here and there, Or you can create a system in your home where you put, prompts, or you have a system in your home that reminds the child of what to do. And that system could be, probably the adults at home. That system could be a routine, right? That you do this when you come back. When you come back from school, this is the routine. You go this first, and then this, and then that. So with that routine, the routine sets the child rolling. Now, this is why we need routines in our home, and we need systems like this in our home, because the systems actually put our children in a space to succeed. All right, that is your way of creating a way for the child to continuously practice this so that the child becomes effective in it. Now, when we're not intentional as parents and we don't create systems that will help our children thrive, right? We don't create systems that will help our children thrive, systems that will help our children practice the things that will help them develop this part of their brain, or develop this life-saving skill. What we do is we do not help them practice frequently. And so it makes it difficult, or it makes it take longer for them to develop these skills. Do you know that children can actually grow? We can actually grow up to the point that we are full adults, and the level of our development of these skills are still not optimized. Now you're not growing, you're not developing, the skills naturally anymore, and yet you didn't even practice enough. You didn't learn enough. You didn't know. You don't know enough, or you have not been able to create a system or a process in your life that allows you execute these skills to be effective in your life. And so that is why when these skills are not learned at the appropriate time, you suffer for it, probably for the rest of your life, until you get to the point where you can unlearn and begin to learn all over again. And usually at this point, it's a lot more difficult. Okay, I'll share a personal experience with you. All right, later. So, inhibitory control. So, these are things that you can do to help your child develop the skills. Inhibitory control. All right, control impulses. So, this skill, if your child has this skill, this is a skill that helps them to control their impulses and resist distractions. All right, it's what helps them become self-disciplined. It's what helps them to have delayed gratification. Now, when you see people who do not know how to delay their gratification, you see children, they see food every time there is food, your child will fall for food all over. Fall for food over and over again. We even have adults, right? We have adults that they don't know how to say no when certain things are placed in front of them. Adults that would damn every consequence because of something. It's because this skill was not developed. We have adults, right? We talk about, we talk about relationships. We have adults that cannot be faithful. We have adults that cannot be committed. We have adults that cannot be loyal. All right. A lot of these skills, or the inability to commit to a project, to commit to relationships and all of that, a lot of it comes from that place that you did not develop, the ability to work on your inhibitory control. So everything that is a distraction, you fall for. That is the same reason our children cannot stay focused and study, because that skill has not been internalized. All right. So how do you help the child? It's the same way. Create routines and be consistent. When we can create routines and we are consistent, in those routines, meaning you insist that your children follow the routines that you have, or you work with them. Try to make the routines not too cumbersome. All right. So that's the trick. Make your routines not too cumbersome, but try as much as possible to, create a system in your home where these routines are followed. Start when they are young and let them get used to it. And as they grow older, begin to step back so that your children can lead themselves. So that way you are not micromanaging their lives. And you do not have to be there threatening them, beating and hitting them for them to do the right thing. Because these routines have become a part of their life, and it has been practiced over and over till the children have internalized it. Let the children understand the why behind what they do, and then be consistent. And with that, they're able to build and exercise and build muscles in this area. And as they do, they are developing executive functioning skill. Cognitive flexibility. This is the ability for them to switch thinking about one concept to moving into another concept. Okay, this is the ability for your child to be on something. This is what I need to achieve this task, and then I'm moving to another task. I need another concept to do that, or I am working on a task and something is not working. I'm able to move from a style that I know or a concept that I know, and then introduce another concept. This is an executive functioning skill. Of course, when children have this, okay, it helps them to adapt to situations, it helps them to solve problems effectively. Of course, it helps them, of course, be flexible in the way that they do things. Your child is not stuck or fixed on something. The child is able to seek the right solution to a particular problem. And if that is not working, they're able to move to some other concept or some other strategy and all of that. So it is an executive functioning skill. All right. The next one is planning and organization. The ability for your children when children cannot execute, all right? So the ability to set goals and to set a plan to achieve those goals. Okay, when children learn to set goals and have a plan to achieve those goals, then we say that we have been able to build these planning and organization skills. The ability to sort resources and the resources that they need, and to arrange those resources in the right way. This is the child developing these skills. How do you do this? Okay, you want to introduce organization as early as possible. You want to introduce children to setting goals as early as possible. Do you know that when you sit down with your children in the morning and you ask what is the plan, and you allow them or teach them to write down the plan for the day? I'm going to do, what we do in the house, we have 5 things. You do 5 things. 5 things. Fit your plans into 5 things that you have to do in a day. And you see the children put the 5 most relevant things that they have to do in that day. We do this with the children in the mastermind also. When you come into the mastermind circle, we help you set goals for yourself. We set goals, and after setting the goals, we sit down and we work with you to create a plan for you to achieve those goals. Now, those plans that you create is how you want to achieve your goals through your everyday life. So the children have an activity, or they have activities that they do every day for them to achieve each of the goals that they have set. When you are doing this, you are helping the child build muscles on how to develop this this life skill, basically, that they will need for the rest of their life. All right. The last one we're going to talk about today is time management time management, of course, and managing of resources. All right. Now, when you teach your children how to prioritize tasks, you teach your children how to stay on task, right? From the beginning to the end. You teach your children how to return to the task that they have committed to. All right. So you know that whole thing. We say to the children, we finish everything we start. All right. When you do this, what you are doing, you are teaching the child how to manage themselves and so manage their time. Now, a lot of us, for instance, have struggled with time management for the longest. Okay, I've struggled with time management for the longest. And what you realize is it's because there was no system probably growing up. There was no system growing up. And the people or the caregivers in your life did not create systems or structures for you to learn and develop this muscle over time. So what will happen is you will struggle with this for the longest, because at the time that this skill was supposed to be learned, at the time that this skill was supposed to be, internalized, the caregivers and the adults in our lives did not help us develop that skills. So you realize that the child or the human being goes on and on with this skill or without this skill. They get into trouble over and over again without these skills. And so rather than help them develop the skill through the systems and the structure that we create in our home, we allow this to pass. And of course, we grow up and then we have this gap, or we have this limitation, and we go on to the world. As I said, the lack of executive functioning skills will show up. It will show up in the way that you live your life. It will show up in the way that in your behavior, in your character. It will show up eventually. Now, it takes knowledge, right? It takes knowledge later in life, understanding the roots of what it is that you are struggling with, for you to be able to help yourself. And at that time, you will have to start unlearning the things that you knew or the things that you didn't, and then start relearning the things that you did not know. And so we have said it over and over again. if you don't teach the skills that your children need today, then you will put them in a place where they have to reparent themselves. So some of us have had to reparent ourselves in many areas and are still reparenting ourselves in some areas. But then again, what will happen is you would have struggled, you would have suffered, you would have missed opportunities. A lot of you would have made a mess, in your life while you are trying to unlearn, because relearn, because relearning gets more difficult as we get older. We have said this over and over again that the time that children learn in the most authentic way is between 0 and 6. So if we're able to lock in, you want your child not to struggle with time management. You want your child not to struggle with cognitive flexibility, not to struggle with planning and organization, inhibitory control, working memory, all of these things. You want your children. I mean, it's your job as a parent to skill your children. So when we talk about skill, don't always think that we're talking about your children going to music school and football and all of that. When we talk about skills, it goes beyond doing football and playing piano. Okay, that's not all we're talking about when we talk about skills. We're talking about our children developing executive functioning skills and, of course, self-regulation. Right? When we're able to teach these children through our system, and that's the thing about it. You don't teach executive functioning skill and regulation with a blackboard or a whiteboard. It's not put in a board, or it's not with a long talk. It is learned through practice. First of all, you model it, and then you create experiences and opportunities where your children continue to practice it. It's skills. These are skills that they learn for the rest of their lives. These are skills that are practiced through their everyday life. That's why we say, when you ignite in your child, right? When you ignite in your child executive functioning skills, when you ignite in your child, the need to learn, when you ignite passion in your child, when you ignite your child's mind, all right, what you have done, or when you put fire, as I put it, when the fire is ignited, what will happen is your child will actually begin to, become passionate, right? They will become passionate about the things that they do. They'll become passionate about the things that they know. And of course, skill is ignited. And that way, your child will become a lifelong learner. So you realize that when these skills are taught and are ignited, what will happen is your child is learning all through. And then they continue to become better and better. And then they develop and they build executive functioning skill. Let me end by saying to you, do you know that one of the easiest way that your child can learn executive functioning skill is your child doing chores, especially your child working and cooking in the kitchen. Your child doing chores will help your child develop in every area of the executive functioning skill, right? Let's look at the kitchen, for instance. Your child goes into the kitchen, right? Food, and your child begins to learn, right? Your child begins to learn how to measure things. Your child begins to learn how to count things. Your child begins to learn what quantity. So today you're cooking and you're like, oh, we're making pancakes. We're making pancakes for 3 people. And then you measure that the child is watching and all of that. The next time you do it for a number of times, and then after a while you're like, do you want to try? And then the child says, oh yes, I want to try. And then you get the child to measure. The child measures it. The next time you tell the child, can you give me the amount of sugar that we need? You will realize that your child will go and measure the same quantity that he's had to measure for you 5, 6, or 10 times that he was practicing. What have you done? You are helping the child build muscles when it comes to their working memory. All right. Now, when you're cooking and you're cooking together and all of that. The child does not see you cook one and put in your mouth up and down the place. What are you doing? You cook from the beginning to the end, and after that, you serve and you sit. You have taught the child inhibitory control. So the next time, as you do this over and over again, when the child gets a chance to start doing, the child is also able to inhibit, all right, and is able to, stay and delay gratification and all of that. What have you done? You have started teaching the child about, delaying gratification and all of that. The child is in the kitchen, you cook together. By the time the child is 8 and 10, they cannot make their meals, and the child needs the child needs butter, for instance, to make the pancake. And he looks around, there is no butter, and the child is like, oh, what's around here, okay, can I use in place of butter? And the child is able to figure it out. Oh, I can use I can use vegetable oil in place of. What have happened? Cognitive flexibility. The child is already able to look for something else to replace, use another command
concept. Use another strategy to achieve the same results. Now you tell the child, you are going to cook pancakes for us on Saturday. And oh, let me see, what's the menu? What are you going to use? What's the process? The child is able to think through a process. I will do this first. I will do this next. This is what mommy did. Crack the egg, do this. What are you doing? Planning and organization. So yes, when we say children need to go into the kitchen, and then of course, managing resources and managing their time. The child knows that this is for breakfast, and then breakfast is at 8:30. Okay, so the child is able to get up. I did it to my 8-year-old. So she's able to get up in the morning. Her brother needs to go to school on Saturday, and she has planned and promised him that she was going to make pancakes for him to take to school. And so she gets up very early and she's like, Mommy, what's the time? And I'm like, yeah, 7. Okay, good. I can make it. Kamsi's going to go to school at 8, and I promised him I was going to make pancakes for him. And then she's working with that time, knowing, organizing herself, making use of her resources and all of that. What is the child doing? The child is prioritizing. The child is organizing her material. The child is organizing things. Now, look at it. I just went through 5 executive functioning skills, right? That your child is building and developing by just being in the kitchen. There are many more. On my book, I actually have self-mentoring. I have emotional regulation. I have sustained attention. I have time management. I have goal directed persistency and all of that, but we don't have enough time to talk about all of this. We will decide whether to do a part 3, or you will just have to go and learn the rest of this whole thing about executive functioning skill on your own. This show is to point you to the things that are needed so that you can pay attention to these things. But more than this show, you need to get yourself into a community where you can grow with other parents. You need to get your children in a community where your child is growing. These are the things that we teach the children in the mastermind circle. So you want to register your child in our next cohort that begins on the 1st of September, so that your child will come and grow with us and other children, where we teach these things in depth, and your child can build and develop the skills with us. We don't just teach, we make them do these things every day, so that they can practice and develop their muscles. Okay, do you know that when your children journal and all of that, that's your child also developing executive functioning skills? So these skills are huge, and the more practice, the more our children become better at them. Thank you very much for joining me. If you like your child, to be a part of the mastermind circle, that you should. If you have children between ages 6 and 14, then the information is scrolling on the screen. Why don't you go ahead and screen grab it? With 5,000 naira, you can book a slot for your child, and then you pay instrumentally from now to the 1st of September, when we begin the cohort. Do you know that the mastermind is one of the most affordable programs that you can pay for, with effective and maximum, and when I say effective, maximum effective results, right? The mastermind is less than 6,000 naira per month. Yes, you heard me. Less than 6,000 naira per month. So meaning you get paid about 70,000 in an entire year, and we'll be working with your children, developing skills, offering them accountability, hand holding, and peer mentorship, and of course, mentorship from yours truly. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'll see you tomorrow again at 8:30, when we bring another episode of How Can I Help My Child? If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. And if you got value from this session, let us know in the comments. We overshot our time by 13 minutes today. We're trying to get to the point where we end at exactly 20 or 30 minutes. We'll get there. Thank you. Bye.